Hey everyone, we're your Pittsburgh Post-Gazette sports writers here covering the Pitt Panthers. Chris Carter, Stephen Thompson, after Pitt drops a tough loss, 24-20 to number 17 Clemson here at Acrisure Stadium. As always, we break it down with the good, the bad, and the ugly. But before we get into that, Stephen, just a very disappointed feeling in a game where the Panthers were down all game. They finally made that comeback push, and it really felt like they were about to have it, but then a late touchdown spoils that.
Yeah, I mean, a part of you almost feels like it would have been better if this was a blowout. I mean, to feel like you were even close, given you're starting a backup quarterback. You got so many new faces on the offensive line, and you almost just didn't want the hope at a certain point. You would have rather just been put away early instead of having to go throughout that game, have that comeback, and then only to come up extremely short. It was just a tough loss, a deflating loss. No one feels good walking out of there. I think Pat Narduzzi tried to tell us, this is encouraging in some ways. They played well. The comeback effort was really valiant, but at the end of the day, a loss is still a loss, and three losses in a row are three losses in a row.
Indeed, the Panthers fall to 7-3. But let's talk about our good, bad, and ugly. Let's start with your good, and that involves the backup quarterback.
Yeah, that's right. Nate Yarnell, I thought, played pretty well in this game. They put a lot on him. He had to throw the ball 54 times, but completed 34 of those for 350 yards, a touchdown, and an interception that came on a heave on the last play of the game. You can question how he managed the offense to a certain extent, especially you think about some of these plays that happened right behind us on the goal line, some of the operational things, but the way that he kind of hung in there with an offensive line that was patchwork and let up a lot of pressure and got him hit quite a bit. I thought Nate was extremely tough. I thought he got better as the game went on, and they don't come back in this game without him playing as well as he did.
I thought he deserved credit. I know a lot of people are going to point and laugh and say, "Oh man, he messed this up. You got to say he got sacked here. He didn't get this done." But Nate Yarnell came in the pinch, got Pitt a lead late in the game, and they weren't able to hold on to it. And like you said, I don't think he was the biggest problem with this offense. We'll get into that later. My good though focuses on the defense. Despite giving up that 50-yard touchdown at the end of the game on a QB draw, this defense came to play. This was one of the best offenses in the ACC. This was the number two rushing offense in the ACC, the number one running back, or number two running back in the ACC in Phil Mafah, and they shut him down. And a large part of that was because of Pitt's linebackers, the Sharks showing up. Kyle Lewis, 2 more sacks to his tally, 7 more tackles, tied with Donovan McMillan for the lead. You saw Rasheed Biles also getting in the act. Brandon George had a sack in this game. The Pitt's linebackers continue to live up to the name. They are the Sharks. They are the tone setters of this team. And even though they gave up some big plays, and we'll talk about those big plays later, it wasn't really them as much as it was the back end coverage. They shut down this run game. Mafah finished with 17 carries for 17 yards. Not even the Georgia Bulldogs held him to a lower yards per carry. And in fact, that was the only time he was held to less than 3.8 yards per carry in the season was Georgia. Now he's been literally held to 1 yard per carry. I do think that Pitt's linebackers continue to prove their special. Kyle Lewis maybe putting himself in the conversation as the best linebacker in college football right now with the way that he flies around the field, makes tackles, stop big dudes, stop quick dudes, whatever it is, they're making plays. And if you go back in the second half, Pitt forced 4 straight punts from Clemson, even when they were getting short fields, and then got a turnover on downs. On all the third downs, including eventually the turnover on downs, it was Pitt linebackers making the plays to force fourth down.
Yeah, there was a nearly 29-minute stretch of this game where Clemson did not score, and I think they totaled only about 27 yards. This was an outstanding performance by the Pitt defense as a whole. I mean, you talk about those big plays, but those are going to happen in a Pat Narduzzi defense, and 24 points, that's good enough to win. And the Pitt defense, I think, did all that they could, especially given how lopsided the time of possession ended up being.
And that's part of it, but let's talk about those big plays because that's your bad for this game.
Yeah, the big plays, I mean, they were tough, especially at the beginning of the game. And in a 4-point loss, the smallest of margins, they really matter. You know, the Panthers gave up a ton of long passes, especially early in the first half. They adjusted, eventually cut those off. That's what led to that long scoring drought for Clemson. But in a game this close against a team this good, you can't be found giving up, 20, 40, 30, 40-yard passes with regularity like Pitt did in the first half. And then obviously the 50-yard run at the end of the game that won it for Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of what Pat Narduzzi's defense thrives on is not allowing those big plays and also making big plays of their own. I also feel like, hey, they get a couple more interceptions in this game, or and they're able to act there. Maybe those big plays don't hurt you as much because you're setting your offense up with shorter fields. But all in all, still, even though those big plays were rough for Pitt, I thought Pitt's defense played well as a whole. I thought the biggest problem for Pitt in this game as a unit was its offensive line, and yes, they are extremely banged up. Ryan Jacoby came back. He got hurt in this game. Branson Taylor's out. Pat Narduzzi made a whole thing about this week about how they don't have another Branson Taylor or a backup for Branson Taylor, and they're trying to scramble to get guys. And then Lyndon Cooper, their starting center, goes down mid this game, and that was a rough injury. This offensive line was rough. They got Nate Yarnell sacked 8 times in this game, and he was hit a lot on those 54 throws that he had. Nate Yarnell admitting after the game, I'm pretty bruised up, but I'm hanging in there, I'm hanging tough, and that's another reason why I think Nate Yarnell deserves some credit for this effort. He did this, and he had Pitt with a chance to win, and it came down to a last-second heave. And he did all that while getting just destroyed throughout the game. He had one time where it was a targeting call where a defender just put his helmet right in his chest. I was really impressed by his toughness, but this offensive line beat up and getting their quarterback beat up a lot in this game. I thought that they deserved a bad here.
Yeah, and Pitt's coaching staff knows where they're at, right? Like they know what the deal with this offensive line is, and so they tried to send some help. They tried to leave a few more guys in protection, get their tight ends to chip a little bit more, and it ended up not mattering. And I think that's really tells you all you need to know about where this offensive line is.
Let's talk about the ugly in this game, because the ugly to me might have been what cost them the most. It was penalties and the ill-timed penalties and undisciplined penalties, pre-snap mistakes. It's one thing Brandon George accidentally grabbing a guy's face mask as he's trying to make a play. Sometimes that happens. But when you have pre-snap penalties, and Pitt had 2 different stretches where they had 3 consecutive pre-snap penalties, one on offense, one on defense. The defense one ended up not mattering. It was a 3rd and 21, reduced it to 3rd and 6 after 3 offsides, and Pat Narduzzi, Nate Matlack were kind of pointing at the center for Clemson was kind of moving his shoulder a little prematurely and kind of draw Pitt offsides, and that was a thing. And so that one's not as bad, still something that you want to clean up. But the unforgivable one, the inexcusable one, was when Pitt had the ball in the red zone early 4th quarter, and they're knocking on the door. It's 1st and goal at the 2, and you see that you see they get the 3rd and goal at the 1, and they have a chance to punch it in. Pat Narduzzi sees that Pitt's offense is confused. They don't know what call they're supposed to do. There's guys motioning at the wrong times, and he calls a timeout right as the ball is snapped, and the play resulted, no one stopping the play right away, and Derek Davis diving in for a touchdown. It doesn't happen because he called that timeout. That timeout was then you think, okay, they called timeout, they're going to be coordinated, they're going to be prepared after that. After that, illegal formation. You line up wrong, pre-snap penalty, it's 3rd and goal from the 6th. After that, a delay of game penalty, which is completely unacceptable after 2 dead ball stops to make sure that you could have everything set up. Then after that, a false start penalty. They went from 3rd and goal at the 1 to 3rd and goal at the 16. They had to settle for a field goal. They lost this game by 4. They make that a touchdown at that point. Instead of going for a game-winning touchdown at the end where they have to do a last-second heave, they can kick a game-winning field goal. And that, to me, right there is the problem. And even beyond just that sequence, which was inexcusable and terrible on the part of Pitt's preparation standpoint. 13 penalties, 100 yards in this game. It's just inexcusable for Pitt that continues to have these penalty problems. I looked it up, the numbers going into this game. They were like ranked 14th in penalties and penalty yards in the ACC. They're going to be ranked even worse after this game, probably with these amount of penalties. It's something Pat Narduzzi says he's trying to clean up, but they just haven't. And at this stage of the season, you are who you are with 2 games left in your regular season schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. It's becoming a consistent problem for Pitt, and I think you hit on a really important thing, which is the timing of these penalties. I mean, they weren't necessarily widespread throughout the game, but they were clustered in really important moments, and that's just something that you can't have in a game that's as big as this. And that seems to be kind of a theme of the season for Pitt. I mean, it's kind of fumbling at the worst possible moments, and it's kind of the timing of things that make some of these mistakes feel even worse.
Well, let's get to your ugly in this situation.
Yeah, and it ties to my last point about the timing of things. I mean, this season, which started so well, has seemed to have fallen off the rails a little bit. And there are a lot of reasons for that. It's not just because this team suddenly forgot how to play. There have been injuries to the offensive line, like we said, injuries to starting quarterback Eli Holstein. The schedule got tougher, of course, but the hard football reality of that stuff gets kind of lost when you realize that they were 7-0 and now they're 7-3. When you're sitting after a month and they've taken 3 losses in a row and haven't really looked that good for a month now. So this season, which started so promisingly and had so much potential for Pitt to maybe take a step forward, to be a contender in the college football playoff now that it's expanded, to maybe make another run at an ACC championship game in a wide open league, that's all gone now.
Yeah.
It was hanging on by a thread at this point. Heading into this game, it is officially and kind of formally over. Pitt is now playing for themselves. They're playing for the best bowl game to get into, and that's just kind of sad. When you look back on it, there was so much to be excited about going into really that SMU game, and it just kind of crumbled in front of them.
Missed opportunities continue to be the storyline for Pitt the last few weeks. Missed opportunity at SMU. Granted, you got outplayed by what might be the best team in the conference, but a loss to Virginia at home last week, which was inexcusable to a team they should have beaten, and then a loss to a ranked Clemson team, a good ranked Clemson team. I'll point that out. This is a good football team that beat Pitt, but you had them in your sights, you had them dead to rights, and then you let them slip through your fingers. They had them, and they let them off the hook.
Right. And, at a time when, Miami was stumbling. We talked about this last week, but there are opportunities abound for Pitt to make this a special season, and they just haven't done enough to do it themselves.
So I crown them and crown them. Anyways, Pitt now 7-3 goes on the road to Louisville next week. They are at the time of us recording this, they are playing Stanford. If they win, they should probably stay ranked. I believe they were number 22 going into this week. That's another chance for Pitt to get a big win and maybe boost itself to get to maybe to 8 wins and maybe even to 9 wins if they can win their last 2 games of the season. But a lot to rebound on. Pat Narduzzi non-committal to whether Nate Yarnell will stay at quarterback or if Eli Holstein will return. We'll keep you covered on all that in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Read post-gazette.com for all of our work. Check out this show and all of our video and audio content on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of the daily content that comes out from all of our Pittsburgh sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. From Chris Carter and Stephen Thompson, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the Pitt Post-Game Show. We'll be back Tuesday for our Pitt Mailbag Show, and stay tuned for all our work. Pitt basketball's back Monday. We'll have you covered there from the Peterson Event Center. We'll see you then.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.